Good evening, everybody. My name is Todd Scholl. I serve as the lead learner for the SCEA Center for Educator Wellness and Learning. We call ourselves COOL, and you can learn everything about our center right here at cool.us. That's cool, CEWL.us. On that website, you're going to find all the live streams we ever produce. We post those usually within a few days after we do them live. They go onto YouTube and onto the COOL website. You can also find out about our COOL coaching program, about our mindfulness retreats, and pretty much everything that we do at COOL is on there, along with our member-led content. So I want to invite you to just head on over there and check out those resources. I also want to remind you that we are brought to you by a grant from the National Education Association, and we are proud to partner with the NEA state affiliate here in South Carolina, the SCEA. And if you're interested in joining our union, you can do that right here at this website, join the SCEA.org. And you can join right now with no dues until September. So it's a great time to join our union and become part of a movement to create the kind of schools that all educators and their students deserve. Tonight, I'm really excited about our guest. He is a former colleague of mine. I was a teacher here in Horry County from 1995 until about 2011. And during that time, I got to know Bill Mayer. Bill was an educator and also a coach, a really, really great coach. Did a wonderful job with our wrestling programs, with baseball, and just was really a motivational guy. And a lot of young people really benefited from being around him. He wound up, I think he's back in Ohio. He's an administrator there now, and he has been making an impact in Ohio. And I know he's a big Buckeyes fan, so I'm sure that he was really happy about their national championship. And he pointed out before we were going to talk, he pointed out that we had to postpone his session for tonight. And it just so happens that it's Teacher Appreciation Week. And he's really excited to join us tonight and help us celebrate that. So without further ado, let's bring on Bill Mayer. How are you doing tonight, Bill?
Good. Thank you for having me, Todd.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention the reason why he's here. One of the main reasons is that he's also an author of the book, Are You a Kid Connector Today? And we're going to be talking about that book. Bill, do you want to talk a little bit more about what did I leave out in terms of your bio that you'd like to share with folks before we jump into the conversation?
No, I mean, I had a great, it's obviously not finished, but like so far, 24 years in education in 3 different states. And I think it's now 5 districts at all 3 levels, teacher, coach, AD. Just awesome experiences everywhere. I've learned so much from my colleagues, from these kid connectors, from my mentors, and then from the students and the families. So just very rich experience.
Awesome. So let's start. How did you get into education, and like why did you choose a career in education, and also what got you into coaching as well?
So lived up in Madison, Ohio, big time into the sports, all the sports, and had a number of kid connectors, coaches. I have true 7 kid connectors, but I would say 4 or 5 of those were my coaches. But one in particular, Mr. Fortuna, who is my PE teacher and my head wrestling coach. And my senior year, we got to choose to do a student teaching, and I wanted to be a teacher and a coach, and so I did. That last month with him in my old elementary and taught PE. He showed me not just rolling out the ball. We did lesson plans. We talked about safety, planning, communications with parents. So that was a really awesome experience. And then I wanted to obviously play athletics at the collegiate level. So then I wanted to, I had a great coach, Coach Palm, as my baseball coach for that. And I just wanted to continue doing what so many mentors did for me.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you think back on this career, I mean, you and I were kind of reminiscing before we got on here live and how long it's been. It doesn't feel like, I mean, I've been doing this now. It's my 30 years now, over 30 years in education. I know for you, it's been what, 24? Is that right? Yeah. 24. Mm-hmm. And it feels like it just started, a couple of years ago. At least it does for me. I mean, there's been years where the year felt like a full year, but I mean, when I look back on 30 years, it doesn't seem like it was that long ago. We were at Carolina Forest together. When you look back on your career, what are some of your proudest moments as an educator and a coach?
Um, I think, it's funny you say that. I had one failure. I never had a failure, luckily, in my 7 or 8 years of teaching. But I still remember this one kid that I fought tooth and nail to get across this finish line. This was just middle school math and so forth. But you know, um, I didn't give up. He was like, looking back now, he was the starfish that, I kept throwing back into the ocean, and it made a difference to him. So that was one of my prouder moments that I still remember, Daniel. And man, it was hard to get him a D in middle school math. Couple other moments. I got invited to go up to Notre Dame, University of Notre Dame, with Erin White, one of my girls golf were state champs, and she invited me to come up there. And she said, pick whatever game you want to come. I know you're a big sports fan, so I picked USC versus Notre Dame under the lights. And just ironically, I think things happen for certain reasons. It was family weekend, so I got to see the whole tour. She introduced me some of the big college coaches, like Notre Dame's basketball coach, and I got to see Duke versus Duke versus Notre Dame girls soccer, Florida State versus Notre Dame volleyball. So that was really cool to be invited by one of your athletes. Josh Calder, two-time state champ for me. He invited me to his college, which was in the Horseshoe at USC Gamecocks, for his college graduation. I was actually camping out with some of our special needs kiddos and Mrs. Stacy Hughes, who worked at Carolina for us back in the day. We did a retreat. It was like an overnight field trip, and then I had to bust out early in the morning to get over to his college graduation. That was a really cool experience for me, to be there and be invited to that. I had a number of these guys come to my wedding, which was awesome for them to meet some of my Ohio coaches and colleagues. I took Hinson and Theo up to Ohio. They had never been to Ohio. Hinson had never flown, never seen snow. They got to practice in my old high school wrestling room, and wrestle at the national championships in Ohio. So that was really cool. I took Theo and dropped him off at Penn State. So those are cool experiences that, it's not just being a teacher or a coach. It's more important to me. And then seeing all my kids, a lot of them are in education now, that are in the actual book. I have 64 different people that I've interviewed. Some of them are old students, like Katie Davis, a big time coach at St. James High School. She's a volleyball coach. She was in my middle school math class. And I can name a ton of those kids. Josh Nab, Matt Jolly, both are teachers over at North Myrtle Beach Middle School, and they're PE teachers. So Mackenzie Sellers, one of my students at Conway Middle School. She's a first-year teacher in Riverside School District in South Carolina. So those are very proud moments for me to see them excelling. It wasn't about winning all those state titles or all those wins that we got. It was seeing them now become the best versions of themselves.
Yeah, I remember Josh and Theo, and I remember them talking about the work that they were putting in,
Mhm.
and I think when you think about like what separates someone from being a champion in terms of being like just good at their sport or good in academics, and a champion, or being somebody who's really at the top of their game, what is it? What is that secret sauce that you think kind of separates the two? Is it just putting in the work, or is it more than that?
I think it's more than that. I think it's about a relationship that we can push these kids, to their limits. Everybody has their limits. They can, the mind is a very powerful thing. And when you have a relationship with these kids and they want to impress you and they want to work hard for you, uh, and it's not just about themselves, and you get that mindset of a pack of wolves, and they're representing, yes, the name on their back, but they're representing the name, Carolina Forest or Conway or Ocean Bay or whatever it is. But I think these kids went to the next level because of the culture we had of a family and a team. And they whether it was the girls golf team with Erin White and Rhiannon Lobes and Susan Eskridge and all those girls, to all our baseball teams that we were in the Final Four with Jolly and all those guys, and or whether it was the wrestling team. And then the same thing up here in Ohio. We were on some very, very good wrestling teams in Ohio, and I can name all my players. We're going to a wedding for one of my teammates here in July, and we went beyond our limits because we had coaches like Willis and Fortuna that establish the relationship first before asking us to do anything more than we probably thought we could.
What I think that's such a huge point, and I think sometimes educators and coaches, if you're an educator, you get so wrapped up in your curriculum and wanting to teach the curriculum, or you're a coach and you're so wrapped up in the sport, you want to excel and the team to excel in the sport, that you forget that the relationships got to come first. And I think that's kind of what your book is about, is about the importance of making that connection, because everything else is kind of hollow. You know, you like there will be some kids that follow along just out of duty or a sense of responsibility, but if you really want kid to make that long lasting impact on a young person's life, that connection has to be made. Talk a little bit about your book, Are You a Kid Connector Today, and how folks out there who are watching, maybe there's some younger educators, folks in the first couple of years of their profession, or some younger coaches, and they're trying to figure out, how do I succeed at this? How do I get better at this? Talk about the importance of building relationships and connections, and how they can give some tips on how they can do that effectively.
Yeah, I mean, it all starts with relationship. I think the 3 R's in education are relationships, relationships, relationships. I think, we talk about classroom management and Harry Wong, back in the day, the book that we all got trained on and so forth. And it's all about those rules and expectations. But it really comes back down to the relationships. The kids will burn down the village to feel its warmth, right? And the same thing, these kids will run through a wall if they know that you care about them. And I had great examples of that. And I also work with great examples. Ken Heater, my assistant coach for wrestling, Jack Jolly, the head coach, Brian Hughes and Mike Mayer, my assistant coaches for girls golf. They all understood that it all starts with a relationship. James Comer, I think the guy that said that no significant learning can take place without a significant relationship. I've changed Maya Angelou. I had the privilege of seeing her in Chicago for a PD, and her famous quote, but I've changed it to education, that kids will forget what you did and what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And Rita Pearson, teach like a champion, so to speak. The kids don't want to learn, or athletes don't want to play for kids that they don't enjoy or they don't want to be around. And I always say that those first 10 days, just like Harry Wong, are going to make or break you. And it's not about just laying down the 10 commandments of law and all that. It's about getting to know these kids, getting to know, I always did the icebreaker, like the two truths and a lie. So everybody got to know each other. I wanted this culture of the room that we were all going to work together. We're going to have our hiccups. We're all going to have our challenges. But we're all going to rely on each other to be successful, whether that is the wrestling team going to the state championship, 4 state titles in a row with girls golf, or it could be just my Algebra 1 class over at, Conway Middle School, Ocean Bay, Carolina Forest.
Do you, I know you're a big Ted Lasso fan like I am, and I always encourage educators and coaches, if they haven't seen Ted Lasso, to watch it, because I think it's a master class on what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because he does, if for those who haven't watched it, the synopsis is a guy who's a successful American football coach at Wichita State is hired to go coach a Premier League soccer team in England, has no idea anything about soccer, but what he knows is what Bill's talking about, is the importance of building those relationships and creating the kind of culture where the players, or in our case, the students, know that you really care about them. And then from there, really, the sky's the limit. I mean, once you can establish that, because I think a lot of this, what you're referring to, is trust. Once a student knows that they can trust you, and that you care about them, whether they win or lose, whether they get the A or the D or whatever, if they know that they can trust you, then they can handle the kind of pushing that they sometimes need, the direction that they need. And I think that's important too, because you can swing too far to being appeasing a kid and not pushing them hard enough, kind of being lax, and maybe they like you, but they don't really respect you. Kind of talk about that balance, and maybe what you learned from Ted Lasso about that applies to education.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because actually I have 3 quotes that are in the book that I was going to reference. And if I ever do a PD, I have the little short synopsis of like the minute or 2 videos of it. But I didn't get into Ted Lasso and until like late. It had been already out for years. I wasn't big into the comedies, and Jason Sudeikis, he wasn't like one of my favorite actors, but talk about a talented individual. And like you just said, it's, the whole Ted Lasso, in my opinion, represents what a kid connector is. He was a kid connector to those young men. And one of the cool things he would say, and I know they're all, movie quotes, but like, if you care about someone and you got a little love in your heart, and there ain't nothing that they can't get through together. So that's the team, and that's the we, and that's the family. But, kid connector, or Ted Lasso, in my eyes, that I saw, he was all about connection, inspiring, motivating, building that trust, like you said, showing empathy, fostering a sense of belonging, deep level of engagement and care. The 3 quotes that I really like from it, or the scenes, because it sounds like you know it pretty well, like I do, is, I would say the first one was that the Trent Krim from the Independent, the newspaper guy, they're eating at that Indian food place, and the food was way too hot, and Ted swallowed it down just to to appease and be respectful and so forth. But Trent Krim is like hammering about, like, you're doing this team a disservice, you don't know what you're doing, whatever. And he pretty much said, success to him wasn't about all the wins and losses, it was about creating the best versions of themselves on and off the field for these young people. And so that was one. I love the barbecue sauce scene where the old owner of the team was trying to goad him into playing darts. And it's all about being curious, not judgmental. So if you asked a little bit more questions, they would have known a little bit more about Ted, that he played darts with his dad up until he died, and then he ends up having to throw those 3 triple 20s, and then the bullseye, and barbecue sauce. But how that pertains to school is, if we ask those more questions about the kids and uncover the layers of the onion, or what's below the iceberg, we might get to know all the trauma and the adverse childhood experiences, and utilize the social emotional learning and understanding the whole child, and where we can pick apart the kid a little bit so that they can access the learning, because they need their needs met. And then my favorite out of all of them, and I've gone through my struggles in life too, and I so resonate with this quote, is when Nate, his old assistant coach, goes over and is the head coach, and then they obviously compete against each other, and he loses, and Nate goes in there and rips off the believe sign, and they don't know who did it. And then he's hiding in the office and under the desk, and for hours, because the cleaning people came in after they left, and they checked the film, and Coach Beard, his assistant, Ted Lasso's assistant, is so fit to be tied with Nate. And then his quote was, I hope that all of us or none of us are judged by our weakest moments, but rather the strength we show if and when we get a second chance. And think about that with kids. Like, these kids have so much baggage and so much trauma and so many challenges, more than I ever had. We weren't rich in Madison, Ohio with my mom and dad, but I had everything I needed. My needs were met. And so to give these kids a fresh start every day, easier said than done, or they're suspended for 10 days, and you do that reentry meeting, and it's like you forgot about it. You still have the progressive discipline, but it's a fresh start, because we all have our hiccups in life, so those are 3 quotes that I really think tie to education or coaching. And you're exactly right. Ted Lasso. It's funny. I bought a book called Lead It Like Lasso. I gave it to my mentor to read, and my wife was just telling me like 2 days ago that she got invited to a training down in Atlanta with her company, Ryan Holmes, to go down and do a 1-day training with Lead It Like Lasso. So
Yeah.
kind of ironic.
Yeah, it's it's almost as if we had prepared to
Yeah, we never done
that question, which we didn't, but you nailed it.
Yeah.
I was thinking as you were talking about this book, Are You a Kid Connector? And I know that you've spent a lot of your career doing that, and you're still doing that in administration. But when you move into administration, you also have to be a teacher connector. And I'm wondering if there's like a book in the future. Are you a teacher connector? As a leader of educators, what would be your advice to other teacher leaders and administrators? When you think about Ted Lasso, and you think about the same type of philosophy that is required of building that classroom culture and getting students to trust you, and for that to be, for them to reach their greatest potential, that a lot of that, in my view, applies to adults as well, as
Mhm.
creating that culture of trust and creating those relationships. So talk to organization leaders,
Mhm.
education leaders, and other maybe department heads. What should they be doing to create those connections?
I thought you nailed it on the head. I'm just as an administrator, where there's assistant principal, principal, superintendent. I'm just a teacher of now adults. I still work obviously the kids with discipline and motivation, with student of the month and all this kind of stuff, and obviously the parents. But it still comes back to that culture of care, and it's that trust with your staff. And I have learned through the different buildings and all these different opportunities, how to lead differently. This Ted Lasso has really helped me as well. But it is about building that trust and recognizing and being a good listener. I think as an administrator, you got to be visible. You got to show support. My phone blows up all hours of the day from teachers. I have one teacher, a kindergarten teacher. She's awesome. All my teachers in this building. That's another thing I wanted to brag on. But she'll send me a picture randomly about her kid getting a little haircut or whatever, and that wouldn't have happened if we didn't form a relationship. One thing I always do, and I even said this in my most recent interview, is I do a little survey, like a get to know you activity with me. I tell them about myself. And then one thing I ask them is, what's their phone number? Almost 99% give me their phone number. And then I send them a follow-up text saying, thank you for sharing that. And right off the rip, it's not just, I just gave them an assignment. I said, hey, I've been to Texas too, or I like golf, or I like Ted Lasso. So they know I read it, but then I also have their phone number. So then I saved it, and then they can reach me any hour, any time of the night if they're having a struggle, or they something happened in class they didn't get to tell me by the end of the day. So we're all in it together. It's not us versus them, which it is sometimes in certain districts or certain buildings and so forth. But it comes back to that culture of family and team. And I always talk the triangle of trust with the staff, the families, and the kids. We want to build that all together, and we're all in it together, because I'm an educator. My title doesn't matter to me, and I think that's how you support staff, especially when it comes to the long hours. It's funny. It's Teacher Appreciation Week, so I do like a little motivational piece of paper each day, whatever. And today's was like, think about the teacher that was that person for you. Who were you that? Who were you for that student this year? How much growth, success, and enjoyment did they have because of you? Think about that. Now smile. So that kind of stuff right here adds to culture. Little things, recognizing them as teacher of the month and staff of the month or kid connector of the month, taking pictures of them, not only to tell your story to the clients, which are the taxpayers and the parents and all that, but giving them the attaboy or the attagirl. One example, I bust her chops. I call her like my long lost sister. I have one in every building I've been in. It was Riho back in Madison, and a bunch of different ones in every building. But right now it's like Mrs. Strimple, and I always she's our PE teacher. She's Kid Connector. She's won an award one time this month, 1 month this year. But we have one of our kids that are a little bit challenging in first grade, and he dressed up as a little construction worker with the the yellow and the reflective, and she dressed up as a traffic cone, and that made his day. So that's the stuff that, if you have good culture and good morale, and the teachers are going the extra mile, they're dressing up for Halloween. They're coming to our after-school gatherings and celebrating getting through the trenches of another month, because it's not an easy job. Everybody thinks you get 180 days of work, and you get the summers off, and you only work 6.5-hour days, and da 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 da. But it's a very challenging job, but it's also rewarding. And I always say, we create every other profession, and there are so many kids that thank us later, but maybe not in the moment. My athletes, my wrestlers probably didn't like me in the moment, but they love me, years later, because they're inviting me to their weddings, and they love getting their hand raised and getting those state titles, etc.
I think, yeah, all of that is gold, and I think unfortunately sometimes uh, school administrators get so wrapped up in their to-do list and things,
Mhm.
and organizational leaders and stuff, and they forget the importance of the relationships, and that's the best leaders I've been around are the ones who invest that time in relationships, and not just about what I need you to do from a
Mhm.
practical standpoint, but like
Yep.
you said, it's like that, making that personal connection of saying, hey, I really care about you, like, what's going on, like, are you okay, like, I heard you had a health scare, or I heard, what's going on with
Mhm.
your kids. And actually, it's like, I remember somebody saying, asking, are you okay, and caring about the answer.
Mhm.
Like, it's and it sounds, and that's the thing I've noticed in watching you through your career, is that it's not a superficial kind of like technique that you're using. And I think
Mhm.
sometimes people look at that, like building relationship, as like a means to an end, instead of this real sincere thing that you're just trying to do, like, because we're all human beings in
Mhm.
this work, right?
Mhm.
Whether you're an administrator or a teacher or a young person, we're all human beings with this, with Maslow, told us we have these needs
Mhm.
for safety and belonging and love and care. And when we take care of those things, then the stuff that we kind of need to get to, the academics and the getting better at sports or whatever you're trying to do, those things will come along. And I think sometimes we get so myopically focused on the testing and the academics and the day-to-day stuff, and I think the education system itself gets focused on too much on the policies, the procedures, and so forth, and forgets that we got to take care of the human beings, and that create that culture of care first. And if we have that, then a lot of the other stuff will take care of itself in time. But what are
It's
some of the
funny you
things?
say it's funny you
Go
say
ahead.
that because I want to add to we think about kids, because they are our why, right? But it's like happy wife, happy life. If we're not taking care of our adults, they're gonna use more sick days. They're gonna be burnt out. They're gonna take it
Right.
out, the stuff at home. Like I remember just recently, one of my previous teachers, she was going through a divorce, and I was so proud of her that she kept plugging. She was a younger teacher, and she's kept plugging away, and she just didn't stay at home. And like, obviously everybody, whether you want a divorce or not, it's a loss, right? So to speak. So
Right.
I was
Yeah.
proud of her for keeping on. So just me checking in with her on that. How many teachers do you know, females, with breast cancer? One of my exes teaches or works at Ocean Bay
Mm.
Elementary.
Right.
That whole community, that whole administration rallied around her. So like, it is a people business. We're not just talking about the kids; it's the adults too, because they make the magic happen. If
Right.
we're not taking care of them, it ultimately is going to trickle down to the kids.
That's right. Well, you can't recruit and retain people when you don't take good care of them and you
Sure.
don't invest in them. And that's, that what's funny is we see that, like, any fan of Ohio State, if you're not investing in the players, you don't care
Mhm.
about them, they're going to get in the transfer portal, they're going to be gone, or you're not going to recruit them in the first place.
Well, you think about the
So
most successful organizations, the Boston Red Sox, New York Yankees, the Patriots, all these guys that win. It's yeah, they have awesome athletes, but they find a way to win in those tough games because of that culture,
right,
the family. Some of the biggest things that we ever did is like wrestling. We would go down to Florida and wrestle together, or take baseball trips. In college down to Florida, and that's why we won late, because we were a family. It wasn't just about baseball or wrestling or whatever the sport was.
it's like a form of solidarity. It's
Yeah.
like, if you're suffering, then I'm suffering too. And if you're
Yep.
you're successful, then I get to share in that success,
Yeah.
instead of it being individual.
Yep.
And that happens too many times in organizations and in schools. People go in their little silos in their
Silos. Yep.
classrooms, and they don't see that it's all interconnected. That, how you operate in first block could really impact how that kid shows up to me in fourth block. And so it's like, it's really, I think sometimes we don't see that interconnected nature of this, of what we're in, which
Mhm.
is, like you said, it's a human endeavor. And think we forget that sometimes in being so focused on raising test scores, or so focused on winning, we forget that we got to take care of the people. And then, like you said, and then you end up struggling and wondering why you did, because you did all you checked all the boxes that the district office or whoever State Department told you to check,
Mm-hmm.
but somehow you didn't end up succeeding, and it's because you forgot that there's got to be an investment in people. What do you see as in your career, your 24 years, as some of the things, without, you don't have to call anybody out, but like, what have you seen in terms of educators and school leaders doing that are mistakes that sort of are the opposite of what you're talking about in terms of connecting?
So it's funny, we talk about like the expectations of a teacher communicating frequently with the customer, right? And I've seen central office sometimes, not in my, because I'm just first year, so I'm not talking, but like sometimes they don't model what they want out of the principals, or they don't model what they want out of the teachers, so to speak. And it's not that like they're being hypocrites, and I don't think it's lack of effort, but they don't remember sometimes being in the trenches or being a teacher where it felt good to be recognized. And it's, Teacher Appreciation Week or Staff Appreciation Week shouldn't just be 1 week as we talk about that, So, and the quote that I said about, I hope that none of us are, all of us or none of us are judged by our, weakest moments. We all have trauma. We all have the iceberg. We all have our hiccups, and not being so judgmental and throwing stones from the glass house, so to speak, and understanding where this is a very tough job and people have other stuff other than work. Because I think in education too, and whether that's union versus non-union, whether it's high-performing school district, low, it's just, I think some leaders feel that it's more than just a job in education, and it should be, but there still needs to be a work-life balance. And a prime example is I got burnt out at my last stint because I was working 70, 80, 90 hours a week, to nobody's fault because I was doing that to myself. And now I'm loving this job. It's back to where my wheelhouse is, elementary land. I have much more work-life balance, with my kids and my family, my 4-year-old. My wife loves it a lot more. I know that. She's a saint for putting up with me. But like, I think leaders need to remember that people aren't going to grind. Like, it's the same thing as when I moved up in Ocean Bay, and I assumed that everybody worked as hard as I did. And we had unbelievable hard workers. That's why we were Ocean Bay. But people always aren't going to be like you. And I think the better you are understanding that, and the same thing like Ted Lasso, you got to maximize everybody's talent because everybody brings something to the table, and you got to recognize that and then work. I won't even say on weaknesses, but support them where they need.
I think that's a really good point. Because there was a point in my career when I was younger, and I was, I'm at school, I'm teaching all day, I'm coaching most of the seasons,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sponsoring stuff, I'm announcing all the home football games,
Yep.
I'm announcing all the home basketball games. Someone asked me to do something, I'm saying yes. Then you have like 2 or 3 kids, you're getting a little bit older, your capacity just isn't the same. And people have different values and different ideas
Sure.
about how much of my time I want to invest in this. And some
Mm-hmm.
people are willing to give, like you said, the 70, 80, 90 hours a week. And other people, it's like, as soon as it's time, I want to get out because I've got things I want to do with my life. And I think the important thing is how do you find balance in that, and also not judge the people who are saying, look, here's my boundary. If I want to keep doing this job, but here's my boundary. Like you figured out, like, you don't want to miss your daughter growing up, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm assuming that was part of the decision.
Yeah.
And you don't want to. You want your wife to feel like you're making time for her and your
Yeah.
friends and your family, and you're also like taking care of your health, I'm sure, and like take care of your mental and your physical health so you can be there for your family and friends.
Yep.
And those are hard decisions to make. And I think that's one of the things, unfortunately, that administration does is it requires so much time that I think it's hard to do that. It's hard to be the leader of an organization and not be the one who puts in the most time.
And I think you sign up for that, right? If you want to win these state titles up in Ohio at these big powerhouses, or in Texas and California, they know that the grind is more than the usual, right? And so forth. But I think how I've even evolved even before Ted Lasso, but like it's really helped me too, is understanding that early on in my administration career is definitely a different mindset when people are using sick days or or whatever, or they need more check-ins because they got stuff going on in their lives. And so I've even evolved because I've seen and learned through all these different buildings that once again, if you're not taking care of the adult, the kids aren't going to be taken care of. And it's a different type of mindset and leadership style that I think the younger Billy at 30 years old, when I first got into Ocean Bay and now 45, it's definitely different. And I think that's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what I struggle with, Bill, is I see it like, you see someone like Nick Saban who
Mm-hmm.
put in the grind and got the success
Mm-hmm.
doing that. But I also see, I'm hearing the voice of, Thoreau in my head saying that a lot of men lead lives of quiet desperation because they're on that grind so much and spending themselves like the giving tree, like giving so much of themselves that there's nothing left but a shell when they're
Sure.
done. And I think it's kind of like, if you find meaning in that grind, if you're enjoying
Easier.
it and
Yep.
you're inspired by it and you love it and you want the grind, that's great. But I think it's also important for us not to send a signal to young people and to educators that if you're not doing the grind, you're not really worth the same. I
Yep.
think that's where we get in, like the culture has a tendency to glorify that grind and glorify like the more hours you put in, the more you're here at school, the better you are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, there's a flip side to that as well. There's also a balance to be found. Like, yes, when you're here, let's really focus and do great work. But if you're the type of person that you say I don't want my life to be an 80-hour week at school.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go home. I want to have hobbies and read books and do other things. I
Yep.
think that we need to say that I think we need to send a clear message that that's okay. Um, One of the things we talked about before we went on was a little bit about this union thing. I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering what your impressions are, having been a person who worked in a right to work state, and now
Yeah.
from what you told me, you have a pretty
So
strong
yeah,
opinion. Like,
yeah,
what's the difference there?
two right to work states, because Arizona's the same way. And I'll be honest with you, at first I didn't really like the mindset of union because I thought, I had I guess maybe preconditioned thoughts, but I see that, I was even talking with one of my old baseball coaches yesterday when I was golfing about, he kind of doesn't like the idea of union. He's down in South Carolina and so forth. And I said, there's a lot of things that can benefit teachers: fighting for wages, fighting for, like you said, balance, work-life balance, insurance, the whole nine. But just like anything else, there are some negatives too. Sometimes they'll protect, some, non I wouldn't say non-experienced, but it would be more of the ones that aren't working as hard. So, some that aren't good for their brand, so to speak. So there's positive, negatives and everything, right? But I am much more pro-union than maybe before I entered Ohio because of, and I'm from Ohio, so I didn't even understand unions or anything like that. I was a kid, and so forth.
Right.
And in South Carolina, you just think that's how it is, when you're working,
Right.
so there's definitely a benefit to unions. And I think, this job is very, very hard and stressful. That's why it's a dying sport, as I say, right? We can't get teachers. People aren't going into the education field. And a lot of it's out in Las Vegas, Arizona, South Carolina, the southern states, because there aren't unions.
Right. I want to give you a chance to, before we wrap up, to talk about this book. I'm going to put a picture of it up on the screen. Are You a
Yeah.
Kid Connector Today? And this is available on Amazon. Are
Yeah.
there other places that folks can find it, or is it primarily Amazon?
Yeah, it's just Amazon. We had a big hit in that first month and a half because we're pushing it. I was tagging people and so forth. I don't know if I sold another book in the last month or so, but it wasn't even about the book. It's about recognizing the 65 different adults. Tressel's in it, Ohio State's old coach, Gary Gilmore, legend at Coastal Carolina, some awesome authors, Joe Sanfilippo, the superintendent of Wisconsin. But yeah, it's a culmination of 8+ years. I got the term from Rob Gasparello. He said he was in the Houston Independent School District at Sharpstown High School, and he had 85% Hispanic, 10% African American, 5% white, and the kids weren't coming to school. It was Dropout Nation. There was a PBIS special on it, and he said he needed kid connectors. He thought outside the box. He had a nursery on his campus to have the ladies, drop off their kid and get their education, get their degree. And I ran with that. Like, him and I connected because we played basketball that weekend. I felt like I was a D1 athlete. We went out to dinner and all this kind of stuff. And I just ran with that because I've had so many kid connectors. I have my own 7 kid connectors, Barry to Willis, Fortuna, Peterland, Sorber, Palm, Cheryl General, which was Mrs. Perlay back in the day.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think this book just helps everybody remember their why, talks a lot about trauma-informed care and whole child and adverse childhood experiences, social emotional learning, the importance of that, and how important our profession is more than ever. Because like you said, with the work-life balance, we're asking so much out of teachers now. They're not just a social studies teacher. They are a guidance counselor. They're a nurse. They're a psych. They are doing so much more than you and I did in 2001.
That's right. 100%.
Right?
Yeah.
And the kid connectors do it no matter what, but now it's an expectation almost out of everybody during that clock window to find a way to win with every kid. And some of these kids have more challenges than others.
Right. And unfortunately, I think what's happening to a lot of good kid connectors is you have someone come in and tell them, well, you need to do things this way and this way. Like, there's all these prescriptive kind of stuff, the stuff that's going on that takes away their autonomy, and it kind of kills their capacity to really connect, because you're kind of having to go at the pace that they're telling you to go at. And sometimes to really connect with kids, we, like you said, it's really important for us to listen and for us to hear what, kind of like honor what it is they're curious about, or honor what it is that they're going through, rather than us pulling them through a pacing guide or whatever it is that we have been told is essential. It's like, what's essential is what you're talking about, is building those relationships with kids. And you can't do that if you don't listen to them.
Well, listen. One of my mentors, Mrs. Rogas, listen and silent are the same letters, just in a different order, right? And I think the best districts, my previous district, Riverside, they took out social emotional learning because of a couple board members, right? And at Euclid, it's so important, to meet that whole child and get to know these kids. So I think the best districts that are making hay and getting all these test scores are understanding it's more than the X's and O's. It's more about all the intangibles that will then allow these kids to access that learning. And I think the best kid connectors don't teach science, social studies, math. They teach kids science, social studies, math. It's not about the content. It's about getting them to the content through the relationship building, et cetera.
And that's the right thing to do. Regardless of the test results, it's the right thing to do.
Sure.
But as we both know, if you do the right thing for kids, then, and you do the right thing for educators, you recruit better educators, you retain educators, they're in a better mood, they're going to have a better classroom culture, and the students are going to benefit, and the whole system's going to benefit. But if you try to just push this whole thing about testing and compliance and all of that, without building those relationships first, it's destined to just be a lot of turnover, a lot of strife, a lot of kids dropping out and disengaged, and a lot of discipline issues because you're not investing in the relationships.
And I say connection is key. Kids enjoy you, right? And if you're happy and you're enjoying what you're doing with your colleagues, you're going to come to school more. You got to model that great attendance, and the ones that do, obviously, are having kids follow that. And you said something that just it really tuned me. But the bottom line is the best schools have that great culture. They take care of the kids. They take care of themselves. It comes down from the leadership from above, and they have that culture of family and team.
That's it. It's a culture of family and team. It really is. You got to know, we don't want to use this word, but it really does come down to love, like loving your
Mhm.
fellow, loving your students, loving your colleagues,
Mhm.
and that culture of love, like you said, if it's not established from your leader, then it's going to be really hard to create, cultivate, and sustain. Um, and so it really requires great leadership, leaders like you, Bill. I want to thank you for your time tonight. My last question, this is the easiest question I've ever asked you. What is it like to pull for a national championship college football team?
Well, you do it with your Gamecocks in baseball, right? In
Yeah.
golf, you guys got some
And
good things
women's
going.
basketball, yes,
Girls
we got
basketball,
we
right?
got that.
I'm a
That's
Gamecock
great.
too. I'm a
Okay.
Gamecock too. I don't know if you know that, Todd. I'm a game. I got my master's from South Carolina,
Okay. All right.
Heidelberg,
So
in
you care.
Ohio, whatever. But
So
it's really cool, especially we talk about like that relationship piece. I don't know if you heard, we lose to Michigan, and people are, I was one of the included, like this coach got to go and all that. But that they had a players only meeting. They circled the wagons, and they went wild, through the playoffs because they were fighting for their coach. Because they thought the coach was going to be gone after losing to Michigan again,
right.
and then they run the table, and yeah, we bought a lot of players for sure, but you know, but yeah, it is
Yeah.
nice because
Be a
you have a
kid
state that
connector.
thinks that hard.
Be a kid connector and have that NIL money for sure. Uh, yeah, yeah, and hit the portal hard. But
Yeah,
I think Shane Beamer's doing a great job
yeah.
with his culture. He feels like he's kind of got some of that Ted Lasso in him,
Hmm.
and um, and I'm excited to see what they can do this year. I mean, Ohio State's going to be loaded again, but thanks, Bill, for your time. And again, for folks who are tuning in and want to read more about Bill's thoughts on all this stuff, his book's available. It's called "Are You a Kid Connector Today?" The cover looks like this, so just head on over to Amazon, type in "Are You a Kid Connector Today" by William Mayer, and you will find that book. Order it. Reach out to Bill if you are looking for a speaker, if you just need some advice, someone to talk to about the ideas in the book. Bill's a great resource for that. And again, wishing you and your beautiful family well, and hope you finish strong this school year, and know that you always have an ally here in South Carolina if you need anything, Bill.
Thank you, Todd, so much for this opportunity.
All right, take care, Bill.
All right, see ya.
All right, everybody, that's Bill Mayer. Before we head out, a couple things I want to talk about. First of all, if you are an early career educator in South Carolina and you're looking for some free advice, uh, Cool Coaching is amazing. It's free, it's online, it's one-to-one. Every Tuesday and Thursday night from 6 to 8, these amazing three people that you see on the screen here, Angie, Stephanie, and Marcella, are online and ready to give you some tips or just a listening ear, and answer your questions. You go to cool.us/coaching or cool.us/coaching from 6 to 8 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We have one spot left for our Educator Wellness Retreat. Bill talked a lot about social emotional learning, and we talked about taking good care of our educators. And this is for anybody who works in a public K-12 school. So cafeteria workers, bus drivers, administrators, classroom teachers. If you work in a K-12 school, we do have one spot left for our July retreat. That's July 23rd through 25th. Go to cool.us/retreat to learn more about that. If you are interested in the June one, you can apply for that and get on our waiting list. Right now, we get about 2 or 3 people on the waiting list. If we have cancellations, you'll be accepted. So check out that resource. Coming up in a couple of weeks, we have Cool Beans episode. This is our teacher induction show. We're going to be talking about financial tips. That's May 28th from 6 to 8 o'clock. For those of you who are trying to pass the praxis, unfortunately, that is still a requirement. I'd love to see the praxis gone, but while it's still here, if you need support, we have actually created a whole page of support at cool.us/praxis. We have partnered with NEA and study.com, and you can sign up for one of those, a free account to study.com to access their amazing resources. I think they have a 92% passage rate for people who use those resources on the praxis. So if you are someone that's your sort of like hurdle to get through to get to the classroom, check out the resources that we have on the Cool website at cool.us/praxis. And one more thing, Alex Del Castillo is a young teacher, and what's Bill said he taught at Ocean Bay. Well, Alex teaches at Ocean Bay Middle School, so shout out to Ocean Bay Middle School here in Horry County. And Alex does a thing called Cool Yoga, and that's on the website as well, cool.us/yoga. And he is on, I think, every Wednesday night. It's called Wind Down Wednesdays, and he does all kinds of cool stuff, pun intended, on Instagram and TikTok. So if you're not following the SCEA on Instagram or TikTok and you're on those platforms, just go over there and type in the South Carolina Education Association or the SCEA, follow, and you'll see a lot of Alex's great content that he posts there. Again, I want to thank Bill Mayer, and the author of Are You a Kid Connector Today? Head on over to Amazon. You can order that book now. I want to thank everybody who tuned in. We had Mark, and we had Norm. Thank you, Norm, for tuning in. We had Cindy, Lily, and we had Patty Mayer. We had Jack. Let's see, who else do we have? We had someone named Jack Whaley. Sally tuned in. Former student of mine, Nikki, who's an educator. Nikki, how are you doing? Thank you so much for tuning in. Kathy tuned in. Lulu tuned in. Doug Baker. We had a lot of people watching. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. Thanks again to Bill. Bill says, thank you for watching Simple Formula. Relationships matter. Establish trust. Culture of care. Listen, understand, and understand trauma-informed care. Social emotion. Like, it is a simple formula, and it's amazing how many folks get that wrong. It's amazing. Establishing a culture and establishing relationships, whether it's a classroom, a school, an organization, is so critical to the functioning of that organization, school, or classroom, or team. If you're going to have a team that's going to succeed together, there's got to be cohesiveness. There's got to be a bringing together of people. Sometimes there's got to be some healthy conflict. Sometimes there's definitely got to be really good communication and a sense of trust, and a sense that I am valued as a person, and that we as human beings are valued, and that we value each other and care about what we're trying to do together. And I thanks Bill for pointing that out tonight, and for being our guest tonight. And thank you for tuning in, and to all the educators watching and across South Carolina and across the country. Wish you a happy Teacher Appreciation Week. As Bill said, it shouldn't just be a week. We need to appreciate teachers every single day, because without teachers, imagine what this country would be like without teachers. I mean, it's such noble and honorable work, and we at the SCEA want to thank every educator in South Carolina for the work that you're doing, and NEA, I know, wants to thank every educator in the country. And we're doing it under very tough circumstances. We'll stick together, have solidarity, and we're going to work together to create the kind of schools that you deserve. And we'll see you on our next live stream in a couple of weeks. Until then, have a great week. Bye.
Together we learn, together we grow, together we heal, together we flow. Be cool, every teacher, every school. Be cool, every teacher, every school. Be cool, every teacher, every school.